Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're standing on the edge of a colossal battlefield, diving right in to the opening moments of one of the most important texts in the world, the Bhagavad Gita.
And the whole thing kicks off with this single, anxious question from a blind king, Dhritarashtra. See, he can't see the battle himself, so he's asking his advisor, Sanjaya, who's been given this kind of divine sight, to be his eyes and ears. This one question basically opens the floodgates for everything that's about to unfold.
And make no mistake, this is not just any old battle. This is a massive civil war. You've got two branches of the exact same royal family, the Kauravas and the Pandavas, squaring off on this sacred battlefield called Kurukshetra, ready to fight for the very future of their kingdom.
So on one side, you have the 5 Pandava brothers. We're talking legendary heroes, like the powerhouse Bhima and the unmatched archer Arjuna. But look who they're facing, their own 100 cousins, the Kauravas. And here's the devastating twist. The Kaurava army is being led by men the Pandavas absolutely love and admire, their own great-grandfather Bhishma and their beloved teacher, Drona.
Now, before a single arrow is fired, the entire battlefield just erupts. It's this incredible symphony of war cries and instruments. It's like a declaration of power, you know? It's psychological warfare before the real fight even begins, and it all starts on the Kaurava side.
And just get a load of how this plays out. It's this escalating call and response. First, the Kaurava commander, Bhishma, lets out a roar and blows his conch shell, and his whole army just explodes with noise. But the reply? Whoa! From their amazing chariot, Lord Krishna and Arjuna blast their own divine conches. And then the entire Pandava army joins in. The sound is just thunderous.
The sound from the Pandava side is so incredibly powerful, so world-shaking, that the text says it literally tore the hearts of their enemies. I mean, think about that. This isn't just noise. It's a clear signal of the sheer power and maybe even divine favor on the Pandava's side, and it absolutely shakes the Kauravas to their core.
So this is where we meet our main guy, Arjuna, right at the peak of his powers. He hears the roar of his army, he sees the enemy lined up. He is the picture of a perfect warrior, confident, focused, and totally ready to fight for what he believes in.
He turns to his charioteer, who, by the way, is actually the Lord Krishna in disguise, and he makes a request. He says, "Hey, take me to the middle of the battlefield, right between the two armies. I want to get a good long look at the people I'm about to destroy."
But this one request, a request that comes from a place of pure warrior confidence, is about to lead to his absolute undoing.
Krishna's like, "You got it." But he's got a plan. He doesn't just park the chariot anywhere. He pulls up right in front of Bhishma, the head of the family, and Drona, the teacher who taught Arjuna literally everything he knows about fighting. So the view Arjuna gets isn't an army of faceless enemies, it's a horrifying family reunion.
And as he looks across the battlefield, it's not just Bhishma and Drona he sees. It's everyone. Uncles, cousins he played with as a kid, his teachers, even sons and grandsons. He suddenly realizes that to win this kingdom, he has to personally kill the very people who make up the fabric of his entire life.
And that sight just breaks him. This incredible warrior, fearless just moments ago, starts to tremble. His mouth goes completely dry, his whole body starts to shake, and his legendary bow, the Gandiv, literally slips right out of his hand. This isn't just him changing his mind. It's a total physical and psychological collapse. He is just completely overwhelmed by grief and compassion. His entire worldview flips on its head. He turns to Krishna and starts making this passionate, almost desperate case for why this war, the very war he was ready to die for, is completely and fundamentally wrong.
He asks this question that echoes through time, right? What good is winning a kingdom? What's the point of pleasure? What is the point of living if you have to build it all on the bodies of the people you love? He totally rejects the very thing he was just fighting for.
And this is why the Gita has gripped people for thousands of years. Arjuna's crisis is our crisis. You know, it's not just some story about an ancient war. It's basically a user's manual for life, and it tackles those huge moral dilemmas we all face when what we're supposed to do goes against everything in our heart.
And Arjuna isn't just being emotional here. He lays out a logical argument. He says, first, killing our family is a terrible sin. Second, when we kill the elders, we destroy our family traditions. Third, without traditions, society will fall into chaos and corruption. And finally, he says, This will dishonor our ancestors so much they'll lose their place in the afterlife. To Arjuna, the price of winning is the complete destruction of his entire world.
So he brings it all back to this simple, heartbreaking point. Even if his cousins are the bad guys, it just can't be right to kill them. How can we possibly be happy, he asks, if that happiness comes from slaughtering our own family?
And all of this leads us to the final, absolutely crucial moment of this first chapter. Arjuna has made his case, he's poured out his heart, and now he acts on it.
He does the one thing a warrior is never supposed to do. He's so overcome with grief that he just throws down his bow and arrows, the symbols of his entire identity and duty, and he just collapses onto the seat of his chariot. He officially refuses to fight.
And everything stops. A warrior's most sacred duty is to fight for what's right. But what do you do when that duty forces you to do the unthinkable? Arjuna's crisis has brought this entire war to a grinding halt, and his despair now demands an answer from his charioteer, from Krishna. And this is what sets the stage for one of the most profound spiritual conversations in all of human history, which is where we'll pick up next time.
All right, so today we're diving into one of the most profound conversations ever recorded, and it comes from Chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. It's basically a masterclass in how to handle a crisis, and it all kicks off with this legendary hero who's just completely falling apart. So picture this, you're on a massive battlefield, but the real war, well, that's happening inside the mind of this incredible warrior, Arjuna. He's having a total moral breakdown. He just completely surrenders to his guide, Krishna, and his plea is so simple, so desperate. He just says, tell me what to do. What is the right path? He's completely lost and just needs a guide.
So, let's talk about this hero's moral crisis. I mean, what could possibly bring a celebrated hero, the best of the best, to this breaking point? Well, the scene is set for this huge civil war, and Arjuna, who's like the greatest archer of his time, is supposed to be fighting for his kingdom. But then he looks across the battlefield, and he doesn't see enemies. He sees his family, his teachers, his cousins, his grandfather, everyone.
And just like that, his resolve completely crumbles. He's just overcome with grief, and he turns to Krishna and asks, how can I possibly fire arrows at Bhishma and Drona? I mean, these are the people he loves, the people he respects more than anyone. The very thought of fighting them is just too much to handle.
And his reasoning, it makes sense from his point of view. He's basically saying that any victory would be completely tainted, it would be meaningless. He thinks it's better to live as a beggar than to enjoy any kind of pleasure that's, and I quote, stained with blood. The idea of ruling a kingdom just isn't worth the pain of losing his family.
And that's it. He just gives up, totally overwhelmed, totally confused. He literally puts down his weapons, sinks down in his chariot, and just tells Krishna flat out, I will not fight. This is his rock bottom. He's no longer a warrior in this moment. He's a student desperately looking for answers from his guide.
Okay, so this brings us to Krishna's teaching on the eternal soul. And you gotta ask, how does Krishna respond to this complete breakdown? Well, it's not with a pep talk. It's not with some clever battle strategy. Nope. He goes way, way deeper. He starts with a lesson on the fundamental nature of reality itself.
Krishna starts with this, gentle but really firm correction. He basically tells Arjuna, you're saying a lot of wise-sounding things, but you're mourning for stuff that the truly wise don't mourn for. It's like he's saying, look, your heart is in the right place, I get it, but your whole perspective is clouded right now. So to cut through all that confusion, Krishna introduces this absolutely central idea, the concept of the Atma, or the soul. And he explains that this is your real self, your true identity, and it is completely, fundamentally different from the physical body that it's living in. And he draws this really sharp line in the sand. Look at the body. It's perishable. It goes through youth, old age, and eventually it's gone. But the soul, the Atma, that's eternal. It doesn't change. It can't be destroyed. And really getting this concept is the first major step out of Arjuna's despair. And then Krishna uses this brilliant, super simple analogy to make it crystal clear. He says the body is just like a set of clothes. Think about it. When your clothes get old and worn out, you just discard them and put on new ones, right? Well, that's what the soul does. It leaves an old body and simply enters a new one. Suddenly, death isn't this terrifying final end, it's just a change. So here's the bottom line, the crucial point. The soul is literally invincible. Weapons can't cut it,
Fire can't burn it, water can't wet it, and the wind can't dry it. No physical harm can ever touch the true self. And that means Arjuna's grief over the idea of killing his relatives, well, it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of who and what they really are.
All right, so now we're moving on to the call to duty. After laying this pretty heavy metaphysical groundwork, Krishna brings the whole conversation right back down to earth. He pivots from the eternal nature of the soul to Arjuna's very practical, very real role in the world right now.
And he does this by reminding Arjuna of his dharma. Now, dharma isn't just your job or your career. It's so much more. It's your sacred purpose, your righteous place in the grand scheme of things. And for Arjuna, who's a Kshatriya, a warrior, his dharma is to fight in a righteous war to protect justice. And Krishna makes it very clear, this is a righteous war.
And the consequences of walking away from that duty? Well, Krishna lays them out, and they are stark. He warns Arjuna that he won't just be sinning, he'll face total dishonor. People will talk about his cowardice forever. And for a legendary, honored warrior like Arjuna, that kind of shame is a fate literally worse than death.
So from this perspective, from the perspective of Dharma, it's actually a win-win situation. Krishna says, look, either you'll die in battle and go to heaven, or you'll win and get to enjoy your kingdom on earth. Pretty straightforward, right? The only real way to lose here is to not fight at all.
And this, right here, brings us to the real philosophical core of the entire chapter, action without attachment. This is a truly revolutionary way to think about action itself. And honestly, this is the part where Krishna gives a tool that isn't just for Arjuna on a battlefield, it's for every single one of us. This might just be the single most famous verse in the entire Bhagavad Gita. And for good reason. It holds the key to acting with freedom and power. Krishna's instruction is radical. You have a right to your work, to the action itself, but you have no right to the fruits of your work. You have to let go of any attachment to the result. This whole approach has a name, Karma Yoga. You can think of it as the yoga of action. It's this incredible art of doing your duty with 100% dedication and skill, but, and this is the crucial part, without being attached to the outcome. You stay totally balanced, whether you win or you lose. So you can really break it down into a kind of three-step mental discipline. First, you act with purpose, with resolve. Second, you completely renounce your attachment to a specific result. And third, because of that, you can stay totally even-minded, totally balanced in both success and failure. That, Krishna says, is the real secret to skillful action.
All right, so now we get to the mind of a sage. It's a great question, right? What is a person who has actually mastered this? What do they even look like? How do they act in the real world? And Arjuna, being the practical guy he is, asks that exact question. He basically asks, what are the signs of a person with steady wisdom? How do they talk? How do they sit? How do they move? He wants to know the real, tangible characteristics. You know, how would he recognize this enlightened state in somebody else? Or maybe, just maybe, in himself one day. And Krishna's description is just beautiful. He talks about a person of incredible inner stability, asthita prajna. This is someone who has given up all the selfish desires of the mind. Their satisfaction comes from within themselves, by themselves. It doesn't depend on what's happening outside. So their mind isn't troubled by sorrow, they don't crave pleasure, they're free from fear and anger, they are the masters of their own inner universe.
And then he gives this amazing image to cap it all off. He says this person of steady wisdom can withdraw their senses from sense objects, just like a tortoise pulls its head and limbs into its shell. What a perfect metaphor, right? It's all about having complete control, complete mastery over your mind and your senses. So all of these teachings from Chapter 2 really leave us with a very powerful question to think about for our own lives. In our own moments of crisis, how can we learn to separate our duty, the right thing to do, from our personal desire for a specific outcome? It's amazing how this ancient conversation on a battlefield becomes this incredibly practical tool for navigating our own battles, big and small, today.
All right, let's dive into one of the most practical and honestly one of the most powerful chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. We're talking about Chapter 3, known as Karma Yoga, or the Yoga of Action. And believe it or not, it all kicks off with a problem that feels like it could have been pulled from right now, today. You know that feeling, right? Stuck between a rock and a hard place, where any choice feels like the wrong one. Well, that is exactly where our story begins. We find the great warrior Arjuna on a battlefield, smack in the middle of a moral crisis that is just so relatable. He is completely and totally confused about what the right thing to do is. So the chapter opens and Arjuna's head is just spinning. He turns to his guide, Krishna, not for a simple pep talk, but for some real clarity. See, he's been told that knowledge is the supreme path, but at the same time, he's being urged to fight in this absolutely terrible war. And for him, it just doesn't add up. And you can almost hear the frustration in his voice here. He's practically begging Krishna, look, stop with the mixed messages. If you're telling me knowledge is better than action, then why are you pushing me into this terrible deed? Just give it to me straight. Tell me one clear path to follow. It's this deep human plea for certainty when you're just drowning in doubt. Now, Krishna's response is a total game changer. Instead of getting into some big debate about knowledge versus action, he starts by completely taking apart the very idea of inaction. His point, for any living thing, doing nothing is, well, it's just not an option. It's impossible. What he's saying here is that we are literally hardwired to act. Our very nature, the energy that makes up the universe, is always moving, always compelling us forward. I mean, just breathing is an action, thinking is an action. So the real question isn't if we're going to act. The real question is how are we going to act, and what's the mindset behind it? And this leads to a really crucial distinction. Krishna lays out two ways to go about this. On the one hand, you've got the hypocrite. This is the person who looks disciplined on the outside, but inside their mind is just running wild, daydreaming about all the things they've supposedly given up. But then you have the truly excellent individual. This person gets it. They control their senses by first mastering their mind. They realize the real battle isn't what's happening on the outside, it's won or lost on the inside. And that brings us right to the heart of this chapter, Karma Yoga. You can think of it as the art of doing what you have to do, doing your duty, but without getting all tangled up in the results. Not the praise, not the blame, not the success, not the failure. It's about turning your work, whatever it is, into a form of worship. The key concept to unlock this is something called yajna. The simplest way to think about it is as a selfless offering. Krishna explains that when you do your work as a yajna, when it's for the good of the whole system, not just for your own personal gain, you're actually freed from the consequences, from the bondage of karma. But any action done for purely selfish reasons, well, that just tightens the chains. Then Krishna just zooms out and shows how this fits into this beautiful cosmic cycle. He lays it all out. Our actions, our karma, fuel these selfless offerings, or yajna. Those offerings, in a way, sustain the cosmic order that brings the rain. The rain makes the food grow, and the food sustains all of us. So your personal, everyday duty, it's directly plugged into the well-being of the entire universe. It's that big. And he does not mince words here. He says that if you just take and take from this incredible system, enjoying all the gifts it gives you without offering anything back through your own selfless work, you're basically a thief. It's this powerful call to action, to participate, to give back, and to see our work as part of this grand interconnected design. Okay, so this brings up a really good question when you might be thinking right now. What if you're enlightened? What if you're totally content, self-satisfied, and you have nothing left to gain from the world? Why should you bother working at all? Why not just kick back and enjoy that inner peace? Krishna's answer here is just so profound. He says the wise have to act not for themselves, but for the sake of everyone else. They have a responsibility to set the standard, to lead by example. Because let's face it, people look up to leaders and role models. And if the best among us just check out and stop contributing, the whole fabric of society starts to unravel. And then he uses himself as the ultimate proof. As the divine, Krishna literally has nothing to gain. He owns the whole show. Yet he is constantly, tirelessly engaged in action just to maintain the balance of the universe. He warns that if he were to stop, all the worlds would just fall into ruin. This idea of acting for the welfare of the world, that's the highest motivation there is. But Arjuna isn't quite done. He pivots, and he asks another one of those deeply human questions. He says, okay, I get it. But what is this thing inside of me that makes me mess up? What is this force that compels me to do wrong even when I know better, as if driven by force? And Krishna's diagnosis is immediate and crystal clear. The enemy, he says, isn't out there on the battlefield. The real enemy is inside you. It's kama, this insatiable, burning desire or lust. He calls it the great devourer, the great sinner, and he says that is the enemy you must conquer. So what does this enemy actually do? It messes with our judgment. It clouds our wisdom. And to help us really get it, Krishna gives these three incredible analogies. He says, desire covers our wisdom just like smoke covers a fire, or like dust covers a mirror, or like a womb covers an unborn child. In every case, something brilliant and clear is being hidden from view. So where does this enemy hang out? Krishna actually gives us a map of its fortress. It sets up shop in our senses, in our mind, and even in our intellect. And from these command posts, it wages its war, confusing and diluting our true self, our soul.
But here's the best part. Krishna doesn't just point out the enemy and where it lives. He gives Arjuna and us a clear step-by-step battle plan for how to win. This is the how-to guide for achieving that real inner freedom.
First things first, you have to secure the perimeter. The battle, Krishna says, starts with the senses. You have to regulate them from the very beginning, because they're the open gates through which desire storms in and takes over the mind. And then, he lays out the chain of command for our inner world. Think of it like this. Yes, the senses are powerful, but the mind is higher than the senses. And our intellect, our ability to reason and choose, is higher than the mind. But what's higher than all of that? What's at the very top? The self, the soul, your true, unchanging core. And that right there is the ultimate strategy. Know yourself as that pure soul which is beyond even the intellect. When you can stand firm on that high ground, you can then use your intellect to direct your mind, and your mind to control your senses. And from that position of power, you can finally destroy that formidable inner enemy, desire. And that's how this 3,000-year-old wisdom becomes incredibly personal. It turns the focus back on us and asks us to look inside. What's the formidable enemy, that insatiable kama, that's clouding your judgment and getting in your way? That's the real battle this ancient guide is preparing us for.
So, Chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, it's not just some ancient lecture. It's really this deep personal conversation happening right in the middle of a battlefield. And it's all about the nature of our actions and the kind of wisdom that can actually set us free. It's all about putting wisdom into action.
Right from the jump, Krishna sets this really intimate tone. This isn't for everyone. He's leaning in and telling his friend Arjuna, hey, listen up. Because you're my friend, because we have this connection, I'm going to let you in on a huge ancient secret. And in a way, we get to be a fly on the wall, listening in on that secret.
And the secret starts with a claim that is, well, it's just mind-blowing. Krishna says, look, this wisdom I'm sharing, it's eternal. It's been around forever. And by the way, I didn't just make it up. I'm the one who first taught it to the sun god, Vivaswan.
Just think about the scale of time we're talking about here. It's insane. Krishna lays out this whole family tree of wisdom, from him to the sun god, who then passed it to Manu, the father of humanity, and then to King Ikshwaku. It was this golden chain passed down for ages, until, as he says, it was just lost in the long course of time. Okay, so right away, this creates a major problem, a paradox that you or I would immediately call out. I mean, Krishna is standing right there, a man on a battlefield. How on earth could he have taught the sun god, who is, ancient beyond comprehension?
And Arjuna, who's basically speaking for all of us, asks exactly that. He says, wait a minute, you were born recently. Vivaswan was born ages ago. How am I supposed to make sense of you saying you taught him way back in the beginning? It's a totally fair question, right?
And that question, well, that's what cracks open the first huge revelation of this chapter, the secret of what a divine birth really is. Krishna's answer is the key that unlocks this whole puzzle.
So his first point is all about memory, about perspective. He tells Arjuna, listen, both of us, we've had countless lives. The only difference is I remember all of them, you don't. So for Krishna, time isn't just this straight line. It's this vast landscape that he can see all at once. So how does something eternal get born? Krishna brings up this concept of Maya, and it's not just a trick. Think of it more like the divine cosmic power that allows the unborn, unchanging, absolute reality to kind of project itself into a physical form, all while staying totally in charge of its true nature. It's the secret sauce for how the infinite can show up as finite. But here's the thing. This doesn't just happen on a whim. Krishna makes it clear he shows up, age after age, for a really specific reason. It's like a cosmic course correction. When everything's get out of balance, when righteousness fades and evil is on the rise, he appears to protect the good, handle the bad, and get dharma, that universal harmony, back on track.
Okay, and this leads us into one of the most famous and honestly most misunderstood teachings in all of spiritual philosophy. We're talking about the secret of karma yoga, action within inaction.
Now, when the Gita talks about inaction, or akarma, it is not talking about being lazy or just sitting around doing nothing. Not at all. It's describing this deep inner freedom. It's about doing what you have to do, doing it with your whole focus, but without being emotionally tied to the results, to the success or failure. That's the secret to breaking free from the chains of karma.
And this slide just lays it out so clearly. On one side, you've got your typical binding action. It's driven by your ego, your desires, your desperate need for a certain outcome. That creates stress and ties you up in karmic knots. But on the other side, you have liberating action. You do your duty, you give it your all, but you let go of the result. And that, paradoxically, is what sets you free.
And here it is, the big payoff. Krishna says the person who really gets this paradox, the one who can be in the middle of total chaos like a battlefield, but can still find that inner stillness, that non-attachment, that's the one who's truly intelligent. They see the inaction inside the action, and that's what it means to be united with the divine.
All right, so now Krishna takes that whole idea and he connects it to an ancient concept called yaja, or sacrifice. But he's about to totally flip the script on what a sacrifice really means.
When you hear the word sacrifice, you might picture, an old fire ritual or something. But in the Gita, a yajna is any selfless offering. It's the act of dedicating what you're doing, your energy, to something bigger than just your own selfish wants. It becomes this internal mental process.
And Krishna lays out this ladder of sacrifice. It's like leveling up. You can start with the simple stuff, offering material things. A step up from that is offering your senses into the fire of self-control. Even higher is offering your breath into your breath, like in meditation. But right at the very top, the absolute peak, is the sacrifice of knowledge itself. And this is why. Krishna says it flat out. The sacrifice of knowledge is way better than any material sacrifice. Why? Because every action, every ritual, every effort we make, it all finds its true meaning and completion in wisdom. Knowledge is the endgame. Okay, so we've got this supreme knowledge, but what's it for? What does it actually do? And that brings us to the final, powerful theme of this chapter, knowledge as the ultimate weapon against our biggest inner enemy, doubt. Krishna gives us three incredible metaphors. First, he says that even if you're the worst sinner imaginable, this knowledge is like a raft. It will carry you safely across the huge, stormy ocean of all your past mistakes and problems. It's your escape vessel. Second, knowledge is like a raging fire. You know how a fire can turn a huge pile of wood into nothing but a little bit of ash? That's what wisdom does to your karma. It completely burns up all the baggage from your past actions. Poof, gone. And then we get the final, most powerful metaphor. Knowledge isn't just a passive thing. It's a sharp sword. And its job is to slice right through that big knot of doubt that sits in your heart. The doubt that comes from not knowing. It's the tool that sets you free.
And this is where it all comes together. This isn't just philosophy. Krishna's final command is a call to action. He says, so take this sword of knowledge, cut down the doubt that's paralyzing you, ground yourself in this yoga, and stand up. It's time to act. And all of that profound wisdom boils down to one practical command for Arjuna and for us. It leaves us with a question to ask ourselves. What doubt, what ignorance is holding you back right now? And how can you use this sword of knowledge to cut it down and stand up? All right, welcome back. Today, we're jumping into chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita, and it tackles a huge central question in yogic philosophy: action versus renunciation. I mean, how are you supposed to find peace in this totally chaotic world? Do you engage with it, or do you have to retreat from it? The entire chapter really hangs on our hero, Arjuna, demanding just one single, clear answer to that very question. So the chapter kicks off, and our guy, Arjuna, is completely confused. He turns to his guide, Krishna, and he asks something that, let's be honest, we've all probably wondered about at some point. Is it better to get involved, to act in the world, or should we just step back from it all to find real peace?
action or renunciation. And he's not looking for a long philosophical debate. He wants one clear answer. Just tell me which one is better.
Okay, so let's really dig into this central conflict, because Krishna's answer, well, it's probably not what you're expecting.
And here it is. Krishna's answer comes right away in verse 5.2, and it's a total curveball. He says, look, both paths, renunciation and action, they're both good. They both lead to the highest good. But, and this is the crucial part, he says that performing your duties in the world, what he calls karma yoga, is actually superior. It's better than just renouncing everything and walking away. Now this raises a massive question, right? How can acting in the world possibly be a form of renunciation? I mean, that sounds like a complete contradiction. The answer, and this is the core of the chapter, is all about redefining what it really truly means to renounce something.
So here we can see the two paths that Arjuna is struggling with. On one hand, you have what's called karma sannyasa, basically renouncing all your actions, just dropping everything. A lot of people thought this was the most direct way to enlightenment, a total retreat from life. But on the other hand, you've got karma yoga. This is about being fully engaged, doing your duties, but, and here's the key, without getting attached to the results. Krishna isn't just saying he likes this one more. He's making it clear that it's the superior path. He even argues that trying to renounce everything is incredibly difficult, almost impossible, unless you've first mastered this idea of selfless action.
So here's the whole point, the big takeaway. A true renunciate, what the Gita calls an eternal monk, isn't defined by what they're doing on the outside. It's all about their inner state. It's not about stopping all activity. It's about freeing yourself from that constant push and pull of, I want this and I hate that. Desire and aversion. If you can get beyond those dualities, you're already liberated. It's a state of mind.
And this is what that mindset looks like in action. Verses 8 and 9 list all these super normal everyday things: seeing, hearing, touching, eating, walking, even breathing and speaking. The yogi is doing all of this stuff, just like us. But inside, there's been this profound shift. They understand that it's just their senses interacting with the world. Their real self, their true identity, isn't the one doing the action, it's the one watching it happen. And from that perspective, from that deep place, they can honestly say, I am doing absolutely nothing.
And this brings us to probably the most beautiful and powerful metaphor in the whole chapter. The idea is that when you offer up your actions to a higher purpose, when you let go of your attachment to the results, you can move through all the messiness and chaos of life and not get stained by it. You become just like a lotus leaf. It sits on the water, but the water just rolls right off. It never gets wet. So why bother doing all this? What's the actual point? Well, verse 11 makes it super clear. The goal isn't to get rich or famous or to win at life. Nope, yogis perform actions with their body, their mind, their intellect for one single reason: self-purification. It's about cleaning up your own inner world. Okay, so what's the payoff here? What does it actually feel like to live this way, with that kind of purified mind? Well, verse 12 lays out a really sharp contrast. It's like two totally different ways of living. On one side, you have the yogi. They let go of the results, the fruits of their work, and what do they get? Permanent peace. On the other side, you have the person who is attached, who is constantly worried about, did I win? Did I lose? Did I get what I wanted? They are completely bound up by their own desires, and that just leads to a life of anxiety.
And that inner peace leads to something even bigger, something really profound, a radical sense of equality. The wise person starts to see with what's called equal vision.
They look at a learned and humble scholar, a person of great wisdom.
And then they look at a cow, or an elephant, or even a dog. And even an outcast, someone on the very margins of society, and they see the exact same essential self in all of them. To the wise, the outside packaging, whether you're a scholar or a dog, is just a costume. The inner reality is one and the same. It's an incredible idea, and it's all there in verse 18. So how much attachment does a person like this have to all the stuff in the external world? The answer is zero. Absolutely none. Verse 21 explains that a person who is free from illusion has zero attachment to external pleasures. And why is that? It's simple, because they've tapped into a source of happiness inside themselves that never runs out. They just don't need to look for it outside anymore.
Okay, so as we get to the end of the chapter, it really beautifully wraps all of this up. It describes this ultimate state of liberation and basically gives us a checklist for who gets there.
So, who are these liberated people? Well, verses 23 to 26 paint a really clear picture. They're the ones who are happy and delighted within themselves. They're the ones who can handle the powerful forces of lust and anger without getting swept away. They are free from doubt. Their minds are under control, and this is so important, they are actively engaged in the welfare of all living beings. It's not just about you. It's this perfect blend of mastering your inner world while showing compassion to the outer world.
And the whole chapter wraps up with this one incredible verse. It says that true peace comes from one understanding, knowing that there is a great, benevolent force that is the ultimate receiver of all your efforts, a force that is the friend and well-wisher of every single living being. When you get that, when you really understand that, that's when you find peace. And that's really the heart of Chapter 5. This isn't just some abstract, ancient philosophy. It's an incredibly practical guide for living today. The whole point is, you don't have to run away to a cave in the mountains. You can practice this right now, in your job, with your family, and the smallest, most mundane actions of your day. So it leaves us with a question, really. A question for you. In which of your daily actions could you try practicing just letting go of the result? Where are you going to start? You know, in a world that's just filled with constant distractions, stress, and anxiety, what if the real key to mastering your mind wasn't some new app or a modern self-help technique, but actually a 3,000-year-old conversation that happened on a battlefield? Well, today we're diving deep into the Bhagavad Gita's absolutely timeless guide to conquering the mind.
So let me just ask you this straight up. Have you ever felt like your own mind is your biggest enemy? You know, that it just will not listen, it's jumping from thought to thought, and it feels totally impossible to tame? Well, if you have, you are in very, very old company. This is the exact complaint from Arjuna, a legendary warrior, speaking to his guide, Krishna. He literally says that trying to control his mind feels like trying to catch the wind in a bottle. I mean, doesn't that frustration sound incredibly familiar even today? So let's start right there with the problem itself, the unruly mind. And as we're about to see, this is not some new age issue. It's a problem that's been part of the human condition for at least 3,000 years. Okay, so how did Krishna respond to this? Well, he didn't just offer sympathy. He laid out a practical, step-by-step manual for turning that internal chaos into your most focused, powerful ally. And that whole journey starts with understanding the ultimate goal. And that brings us to the solution, what the Gita calls the promise of a yogi. Krishna presents this incredible goal not as becoming some hermit who runs away from the world, but as becoming a true master of your own self. Now, this is where it gets really interesting because the Gita completely redefines what a yogi is. It's not about doing nothing, it's about doing the right thing. A true yogi is someone who can fully engage with the world, but stays internally free from that emotional roller coaster of, did I win or did I lose? And the Gita even gives us a roadmap for this. For the beginner on this path, your main tool is action, that deliberate, conscious effort to focus and practice. But for the person who's already achieved mastery, their tool becomes peace itself. It's this beautiful evolution from trying so hard to just being, from effort to effortlessness. So here's the bottom line, and it is a profound choice. The Gita says your own mind, yourself, can be your greatest friend or your absolute worst enemy. There's no one else to blame and no one else to credit. The power and the responsibility, it's all on you. And this just paints such a vivid picture of what that mastery actually looks like. I mean, can you imagine having an inner stability that isn't rocked by life's opposites? Heat and cold, praise and blame, happiness and sorrow. The mastered mind sees beyond all those superficial differences and just rests in this unshakable calm. Okay, so that's the goal. It sounds amazing, right? But how do we actually get there? Well, the Gita doesn't leave us hanging. It offers a super practical guide to meditation, the real how-to for achieving this state. And just look at how systematic this is. It's amazing. It starts before you even sit down, with balancing your life, your food, your sleep. Then you prepare your space, get a stable posture, focus your gaze, and only then do you turn the mind inward. This isn't some vague philosophy. It's literally a step-by-step technique. This is one of the most beautiful analogies in all of spiritual literature. Just picture that for a second. A perfectly still flame in a place with no wind. It's steady, bright, and completely unwavering. That, Krishna says, is exactly what a mind that's been brought under control feels like. It's such a powerful image of peace and focus. All right, now we get to the heart of Krishna's answer to Arjuna's big problem. Because after hearing all this, Arjuna is still doubtful. He's basically saying, this all sounds great, but my mind is still a raging storm. So Krishna offers him two absolutely essential tools.
And there it is, the two-part formula. It sounds so simple, right? But it's incredibly profound. Krishna totally agrees with Arjuna. He says, yes, the mind is difficult to control, but, and this is the crucial part, he says it can be done. Through these two things, practice and renunciation.
So what are these tools really? Well, practice, or abhyasa, that's the grunt work. It's the muscle of meditation. Every single time your mind wanders off, you gently but firmly bring it back, again and again and again. Then there's renunciation, or vairagya. That's the art of letting go. It's releasing your death grip on all the cravings and aversions that are constantly pulling your mind off-center. You absolutely need both. One is the engine, and the other is the rudder.
Okay, but at this point, another very human fear pops up. Arjuna asks a question that I'm sure many of us have thought. Okay, what happens if I try all this, but I don't fully succeed in this lifetime? Is all my effort just wasted?
He's pretty much asking, is there a spiritual safety net here? He's worried about getting caught in the middle. You know, he's left behind the ordinary path of worldly pleasure, but he hasn't quite reached the goal of spiritual freedom either. It's such a critical question.
And Krishna's answer is one of the most comforting, most motivating verses in the entire Gita. It is this profound assurance. He says that any effort you make on this path is never, ever lost. There is literally no such thing as wasted effort when you are striving to do good.
The Gita goes on to explain that whatever progress you make, you carry it with you. You basically pick up right where you left off, and you're born into circumstances that help you continue that journey. This totally removes the fear of failure, and it encourages us to just start right now, knowing that every single step counts.
So Krishna wraps up his instructions with this incredibly powerful call to action. He places the path of the yogi, this path of inner mastery, above all others. He's saying it is the highest, most worthy thing a human being can do. It's not just a friendly suggestion, it's a command. Be a yogi.
And so we end right back where we started, with a choice. The Gita lays it all out for us, the problem, the goal, the method, and the promise. But in the end, it leaves the decision with us. That very same mind that can be an unruly, chaotic enemy holds the potential to become your wisest, most loyal friend. The only question left is, which one will you choose?
Hello and welcome. Today, we are diving deep into a chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that makes this absolutely staggering promise to give you a piece of knowledge so complete that once you get it, there's literally nothing else left in the entire universe to know. So what on earth could that ultimate secret be? And there it is, right from the get-go. This is the divine promise from Krishna to the warrior Arjuna. Talk about an incredible hook, right? We're not just talking about some interesting facts here. We're talking about a total, all-encompassing wisdom about the very fabric of reality. This really sets the stage for everything that's about to unfold. But here's the catch. This kind of profound understanding, it's not exactly easy to come by. The text immediately makes it clear that out of thousands and thousands of people, you might be lucky if one even tries to achieve this. And out of those who do try, only a tiny, rare few will ever truly grasp this ultimate essence. This frames it as, maybe the universe's most precious and well-kept secret. So how do we even begin to wrap our heads around this secret? Well, the chapter starts by breaking down all of reality into two fundamental components, or what it calls natures. Think of this as the foundational blueprint for all of existence. Okay, so the Gita basically maps out creation using two distinct ingredients. First, you've got the inferior nature. This is the material world. It's everything from earth, water, and fire to the more subtle stuff like our own mind, intellect, and even our ego. But what makes it all tick? What animates it? Well, that's the superior nature, the life force itself, the spiritual consciousness that actually holds the entire cosmos together. And here is the absolute crucial point. It's from the union of these two natures, the material stuff and the spiritual spark, that everything, and I mean everything, comes into being. This verse establishes the divine as that single source, the womb of all creation, and also the place where everything eventually returns. All right, so if the divine is the source of everything, where is it now? Is it some distant force just watching from afar? Well, this next section makes it really clear that this source isn't remote at all. In fact, it's the very essence of everything we can see, taste, and feel right here, right now. And the text offers this just brilliant metaphor to help us visualize it. Imagine the entire universe is a necklace. Every planet, every person, every single atom is a pearl. The divine isn't just the one who made the pearls, it's the invisible thread running through all of them, holding them together, connecting them, and giving them a single unified reality. And this idea gets even richer through a series of beautiful, almost poetic examples. So, what is the most essential quality of water? It's taste, right? The text says, I am that. What's the essence of the sun and the moon? Their light. The essence of sacred scriptures, that primordial sound, Om. It's a way of seeing the divine not as some person up in the sky, but as the core, defining quality of a thing itself. And the list just keeps going. Building this really powerful picture, the divine is the pure fragrance of the earth, the intense heat and fire, the life buzzing within every single creature, and even the discipline of those who seek wisdom. And then, finally, it's described as the eternal seed, that timeless, fundamental cause from which all existence sprouts. Now, this all sounds incredibly beautiful and kind of simple. But it immediately brings up a very, very human question. If this divine essence is woven into the fabric of every single thing, why do we feel so separate from it all? Why is it so hard for us to see it? And that is the central conflict, isn't it? Our day-to-day experience often feels fragmented, chaotic, and confusing, not at all like we're all just pearls on a single unified string. The text actually tackles this feeling of disconnection head-on. The answer it gives is a concept called Maya, the cosmic illusion. The text describes it as a powerful divine force that puts a veil over our perception. Now, it's not unreal, like it doesn't exist. Oh, it's very real. But it's misleading. Maya makes us see all the individual pearls, the objects, the people, the drama, but it completely hides the thread that connects them all. So, what is this veil of illusion actually made of? The text says it's composed of 3 fundamental qualities, or gunas, that are mixed into everything. You've got sattva, which is all about harmony, balance, and purity. Then there's rajas, the quality of passion, activity, and restlessness. And finally, tamas, which is inertia, darkness, and ignorance. Our thoughts, our actions, our entire world is just a constant play of these 3 forces. And that's what creates the illusion that keeps us so tangled up. So, if Maya is so powerful, so insurmountable, are we just stuck? Is there any hope of seeing past it? Absolutely. The chapter now shifts to the solution, and it outlines 4 types of good-hearted people who are able to turn towards the divine and start to poke holes in that illusion. So the text breaks it down into 4 groups of virtuous seekers. First, you have the distressed, people who turn to a higher power when they're suffering. Then you've got the curious, who just genuinely want to understand what reality is all about. Next are the seekers of benefits, who are looking for worldly things like wealth or success. And finally, you have the wise, the ones who already have a deep understanding of the true nature of things. Now, while all 4 of these paths are seen as noble, the text gives a special shout-out to one of them. The jnani, or the wise one, is described as truly special. And why is that? Because their devotion isn't driven by pain or curiosity or want. It comes from a place of pure, unshakable understanding. They are in constant union with the divine, and because of this, they are said to be incredibly dear to the very source of reality itself. And right here, the whole chapter just comes full circle. Remember how we started with the idea that this knowledge is unbelievably rare? We end on that exact same profound note. Reaching this state of wisdom isn't something you do in a weekend seminar. The text says it can take many, many lifetimes of searching until someone finally realizes that everything is one, that all of reality is just a manifestation of a single divine consciousness. And such a person, the verse concludes, is very rare indeed. And that leaves us with one last thing to reflect on. This whole chapter uses that powerful metaphor of pearls on a string to explain the deep unity of everything. So the question for us is, how can we bring that huge cosmic idea into our own lives? What is the unifying principle, the hidden thread that connects all the different moments, experiences, and parts of your own existence? What holds it all together for you?
What is reality? What actually happens when we die? And maybe most importantly, how can we prepare for that final moment? Look, these aren't just questions for philosophers. They are right at the very heart of what it means to be human. In this explainer, we are diving deep into Chapter 8 of the Bhagavad Gita, where these ultimate questions get asked and, amazingly, get answered with incredible clarity.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with Arjuna's really profound questions, and then we'll unpack this cosmic glossary that Krishna gives him. From there, we'll get into why our final thought is so critical. Then we'll explore the two different paths the soul can take after death, and wrap it all up by looking at the timeless practice that prepares us for that ultimate journey.
So I want you to picture the scene. It's set on a battlefield, but the real conflict, it's all internal. The warrior Arjuna, he turns to his divine guide, Krishna. And he's not asking about battle strategy, no. He's asking about the very nature of existence itself. He's asking the questions that, let's be honest, we all carry around inside of us.
He kicks things off with the absolute fundamentals. What is Brahman, this ultimate supreme reality? What is Adhyatma, the individual self, the soul? And what really is karma, this force of action that seems to shape our entire lives? These are the foundational ideas he knows he needs to get a handle on.
But then, he gets to the most urgent, the most personal question of all. How can someone, especially someone who has worked to control their mind, how can they know the divine at the exact moment of departure from the body? This is the question that really drives the rest of the chapter. How do we face that final moment with purpose and total awareness?
Now, to answer questions this big, Krishna knows he can't just jump right in. He has to lay the groundwork first. So he provides a kind of cosmic glossary, defining all the key terms so Arjuna and, us can really grasp the bigger picture.
And right here, Krishna literally maps out reality for us. He says Brahman is the imperishable, the eternal supreme being. Adhyatma, that's your essential nature, your individual soul. Karma is that creative spark that brings beings into existence. Adibhuta is everything we see around us that's temporary and perishable, while Adidaiva is the universal soul that presides over the whole show. It's a complete blueprint.
And then, just when you think it's all cosmic and abstract, he delivers the most intimate revelation. Krishna says that he, the divine, is the Adiyagna, the very spirit of sacrifice that lives inside every single one of us. So we're not talking about some distant god here. This is a force that is present within our own bodies, which makes the divine incredibly personal and accessible.
All right, so with the terms defined, Krishna now circles right back to Arjuna's most pressing question. What about that moment of death? This is where all that philosophy becomes unbelievably practical, because it focuses on the single most important moment of our entire lives. And here it is. This is the core instruction, the central promise of this chapter. Krishna states it with absolute certainty. Whoever leaves their body while remembering me will attain my divine nature. Full stop. He says there is no doubt about this.
Now, the principle behind this promise is just so powerful. Whatever state of being, whatever emotion or thought you are completely immersed in at that final moment, that is the reality you're going to be drawn to next. Your final thought acts like this powerful magnet, literally determining your soul's next destination.
So the crucial takeaway here is that preparing for death isn't about some last-minute prayer. It's about cultivating a certain state of consciousness throughout your entire life. Like Krishna tells Arjuna, therefore, always keep remembering me and fight. Your daily focus, what you put your attention on every single day, that is the real training for that final moment.
Okay, so building on this principle, Krishna then explains that there are two main paths a soul can take after leaving the body. And the destination isn't random at all, it's a direct result of that person's knowledge and their state of awareness.
He calls them the bright path and the dark path, or Shukla and Krishna. The bright path, which he connects to light, day, and the sun's northern journey. That's for the people who know Brahman. They leave and they don't come back. They achieve liberation. But the dark path, symbolized by smoke and night and the sun's southern journey, that's for those who did good deeds but were still attached to the results. They get a temporary reward, sure, but then they're reborn back into the world.
So if the goal is that path of no return, how in the world do we actually get there? Well, Krishna doesn't just leave us with theory. He provides a clear, practical method, a timeless practice for any yogi who's seeking liberation. This is a seriously powerful meditation technique that he describes for that final moment, but it's built on a lifetime of practice. It involves pulling the senses inward, focusing the mind and the heart, and then drawing your life force, your prana, up into the head. all while chanting the sacred syllable Om, the sound of the eternal Brahman, and holding the divine in your mind. And again, and this is so important, the key is that this isn't some last-ditch effort. Krishna really emphasizes that for the yogi who constantly remembers him with an undivided mind, he is easily accessible. This state of constant, focused remembrance is the real practice. It makes that ultimate journey just a natural next step of a life lived with deep awareness. And the reward for this kind of understanding? It's just staggering. Krishna closes the chapter with this incredibly powerful statement. The yogi who truly gets these truths about the final thought and the two paths goes way beyond all the accumulated merit you could get from traditional good deeds, like studying scriptures, performing rituals, or giving to charity. I mean, this is a radical idea. The goal isn't just to rack up good karma points for a better rebirth. The goal is to transcend the entire system of karma altogether. The yogi who knows this truth doesn't just get a better life next time around, they attain the supreme original home, from which there is no return. They go home. Which, of course, leaves us with one last profound question to really think about. If this state of being surpasses all the good deeds we can possibly imagine, from charity to studying scripture, what does that tell us about the true nature of that supreme original state? What really lies beyond the whole realm of action and consequence? All right, today we're diving into one of the most profound chapters of the entire Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 9. It's often called the King of Secrets, and believe me, it's for a very good reason. It promises to unveil a kind of knowledge that can change not just what you think, but the very way you see reality. So let's get into it and unlock this secret together. Right out of the gate, Krishna makes this absolutely incredible promise to Arjuna. He's not just offering some interesting facts, he's offering the king of all knowledge, the most sacred secret there is. And get this last part. It's very easy to perform and inexhaustible. That right there tells you we're in for something that is both incredibly deep and somehow totally accessible. So what exactly is this royal secret? Well, the text calls it Guhyatamam Jnanam, and it comes with a condition. It's a promise of total liberation, but it's really meant for those who can listen with an open and a trusting heart. Yeah, in the very first verse, Krishna says he's about to share the most secret knowledge. And it's something that goes way beyond just theory. This is practical wisdom. And the goal? It's super simple and direct. To free us from ashubhat, from all the stuff that binds us, from worldly suffering. This isn't just philosophy for the sake of it, it's a literal roadmap to freedom. And listen, the stakes could not be higher. Verse 9.3 just lays it all out on the table. The text says that faith in this path is the one deciding factor. For those without faith, it says, they don't reach the divine. Instead, they return to the path of the mortal world, that whole cycle of birth and death. So what the text is really saying is that this knowledge needs a little bit of faith to unlock its true power. Now, here's where things get really interesting. The way this chapter describes the nature of the divine, well, it's not a simple, neat definition. Instead, it's presented as this beautiful, totally mind-bending paradox that really challenges how we normally think about existence. Just look at this. In one breath, Krishna says, all living beings are in me. And in the very next sentence, he says, and yet they are not in me. So what is going on here? This isn't a contradiction, it's a paradox, and it's pointing to a much deeper truth. The idea is that the divine is in everything. It's the very fabric of reality, but it's not limited or contained by anything in that reality. It's like it's the container, but it's also infinitely bigger than the container itself. And to help us wrap our heads around this huge idea, the text gives us this perfect analogy. Think about it. The wind is everywhere, right? It's moving through everything, but it's always contained within the vastness of the sky. The wind doesn't really affect the sky, but it can't exist without it. In that same way, all of creation exists within the divine, supported by it, but never, ever confining it. And just to hammer this all-encompassing point home, the chapter just launches into this incredible series of declarations. It starts with the very basics of worship. I am the ritual. I am the fire. So the divine isn't just the one you're worshiping. It is the act of worship itself.
And it doesn't stop there. It expands out into the realm of all relationships, of life itself. The text says, the divine is the source of everything. The father, the mother, the one who sustains us, even the grandfather of the entire universe. Then the lens pulls back even wider.
The divine is our ultimate destination, our goal. It's our protection, our refuge, and it's the very origin point of all existence, the eternal, imperishable seed from which everything grows.
And then, bam, the breathtaking conclusion to this whole buildup. The divine contains the ultimate duality. I am the nectar, and I am death. Immortality and mortality, existence and nothingness. Literally nothing, absolutely nothing is outside of its scope. Wow.
Okay, so if the divine is in absolutely everything, how are we supposed to relate to it? Well, the text lays out two very different ways people tend to go, and it really comes down to their understanding and their basic nature.
So on one side, you've got those who are described as deluded, the ones who ignore this supreme reality. Their hopes, their actions, their knowledge, it's all called futile because it's guided by a demonic and deceitful nature. But on the other side, you have the great souls. They embrace a divine nature. They know the divine is the unshakable source of everything, and they worship with a totally undivided mind.
So the chapter then describes the path of those who are just doing rituals to get heavenly rewards. You know, they worship, they get to the celestial realms, they enjoy all these incredible pleasures. But there's a catch. The text says that once their good karma, their merit, runs out, they return to the mortal world. It's this endless cycle of going up and coming back down, but it's not ultimate freedom.
But then we get this incredible alternative. For those who worship with that undivided mind, who aren't focused on temporary rewards, but on the divine itself, there's a profound promise. The text uses this term yog kshem, which basically means taking care of everything, your provisions, your security, your well-being. For these devotees, the divine personally takes on the responsibility for their welfare. It's a game changer.
Okay, this brings us to the final part of the chapter, and honestly, this might just be the most powerful section of all, because here we find out that this deep, profound connection isn't just for a select few. No, it's presented as a path that is shockingly simple and completely open to everyone. This right here is one of the most famous, most revolutionary verses in the entire Gita. The divine doesn't want fancy rituals or expensive stuff. What truly matters is the intention, the reverence, the love behind the action. Even the simplest, most humble offering, if it's given from a pure heart, is accepted.
I mean, just think about what this means. The things listed here, a leaf, a flower, a piece of fruit, a little water, these are things available to anyone, no matter how rich or poor you are. This was a radical idea. It completely shifts the focus of spirituality away from complicated, expensive rituals and puts it squarely on the inner state of the person. It's not about what you give, but how you give it.
And if you thought that was inclusive, hold on. The text makes this absolutely stunning declaration about the power of redemption. It says even a Sudarachara, a very evil person, if they turn to the divine with undivided devotion, they should be considered righteous. Why? Because they've made the right choice, the right resolve, and that single-minded focus kicks off a rapid transformation. The promise is so clear, my devotee does not perish.
And here's what's truly revolutionary. This path just smashes the social and religious barriers of its time. The text explicitly says that women, and also people from the merchant and laborer classes, by taking refuge in the divine, can attain the ultimate goal. This is a universal invitation to spiritual freedom for everybody.
So the chapter wraps up by giving us this beautiful, super practical 4-step guide. It boils down the entire teaching into a clear set of actions. Fix your mind on the divine. Be a devotee. Dedicate all your actions and offer your reverence. It's a whole spiritual practice distilled right into one verse.
And what's the result of all this? What's the final outcome? Well, here it is, the ultimate promise. The outcome of this practice isn't getting a reward from the divine. The outcome is union with the divine. By connecting yourself so completely, by making the divine your ultimate goal, the text says you will find it. You will achieve that union.
So let's bring this all home with one final question for you. This ancient wisdom isn't just for then, it's for now. The chapter tells us that any act, no matter how small, can become a sacred offering if it's done with devotion. So, what simple act in your work, at your home, with your family, what could you dedicate today?
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really profound chapter from the Bhagavad Gita that tackles a huge question. How can we, in our finite world, possibly perceive the infinite? You know, how do we actually see the divine in our day-to-day lives? Well, chapter 10 gives us a beautiful and surprisingly practical answer. Right off the bat, this chapter doesn't start like some grand, impersonal sermon from on high. It's an intimate, one-on-one teaching. Krishna, the divine guide, is speaking directly to his dear friend, the warrior Arjuna, who's really struggling. He's about to share a huge secret, not because he has to, but out of love, because he genuinely wants Arjuna to be okay. And that personal tone, that really sets the stage for everything that's about to come.
So, before he reveals this secret, Krishna first lays out a fundamental problem, a paradox really, and it's that his own true nature is a mystery so deep that even the most powerful gods and sages can't fully wrap their minds around it.
He basically says, I am the beginningless origin of all existence. Just think about that for a second. If you are the source of literally everything, then nothing that comes from you can ever fully grasp what you are. It's kind of like a wave in the ocean trying to comprehend the entire ocean. It just can't, right? He's the primary cause, so fundamental that anything that comes after him just can't see the whole picture.
And this brings us to the central concept of the whole chapter, vibhuti. Now, it's a Sanskrit word that's a bit tricky to pin down with just one English word, but it essentially means the divine glories, the magnificent ways that the infinite shows itself in our world. Think of them as the tangible, brilliant flashes of power and splendor that we can actually see and experience.
Krishna then explains that the entire spectrum of human experience, all the different states of being we go through, they all come from him. And it's not just the good stuff, you know? The intellect that lets us learn, the forgiveness we show, but also the sorrow we feel, the fear we have to overcome, even things like fame and infamy. All these different qualities are just expressions of that single underlying source.
So the key takeaway here is this. The universe wasn't just created once and then left to run on its own. No, it's being constantly powered, constantly expressed, and constantly sustained by this divine source. Every single moment, every quality, every single thing that happens, it's all flowing from this one origin point. Now, Arjuna's listening to all of this, and he is completely convinced. He totally gets it. But this new, profound understanding brings up a very practical, very human problem for him. He wholeheartedly agrees. He calls Krishna the supreme Brahm, the ultimate reality, the source of everything. He's not arguing, he's not questioning the philosophy, but he has this sudden realization that knowing all this in his head is a world away from actually perceiving it, from feeling it in his own life. And this is the central question of the entire chapter. Arjuna basically asks, okay, I believe you, but how? How can a mortal guy like me possibly see and meditate on you, on this infinite divinity, in the world all around me? Where am I supposed to look? What should I focus on? He needs a practical guide, a roadmap. And Krishna's answer is just, it's brilliant. It's not some complex, dry, philosophical theory. Instead, it's this sweeping, poetic tour of the universe. He starts pointing out all the places where his glory, his vibhuti, shines the absolute brightest. And where does he start? Not with something grand and distant. He begins with the most intimate and universal manifestation of all. He says that before you look anywhere else, the primary place to find me is as the very consciousness, the soul, that spark of life that's inside every single living thing. And then he starts listing these concrete examples, and you'll quickly see a pattern. In any category you can think of, he is the peak of excellence, the most brilliant example. So of all the sources of light, he's the radiant, life-giving sun. He is the most majestic, the most powerful, the most significant. Of all the mountains in the world, he is the awe-inspiring Himalayas. He's pointing to the absolute pinnacle in every single domain. Now, what's really cool about this is that it's not just a list of impressive things. It's actually a guide for meditation. It's a way to train your mind to recognize and appreciate the divine by first learning to see it in the world's best, its greatest, and its most beautiful forms. And this just brilliantly shows you the sheer breadth of these manifestations. I mean, they aren't just in the natural world. He's the king among people, the sacred Samaveda among all scriptures, and he's even found in abstract concepts like eternal time and the profound power of silence. Okay, so this next moment is absolutely fascinating.
After saying he's the lion among beasts, he turns and identifies himself with Arjuna directly. Among the Pandava brothers, he says, I am you. That is such a powerful statement. He's showing the seeker that this divine spark of excellence exists right there inside the seeker himself. So after this incredible, sweeping list, Krishna reveals the most mind-bending part of this entire teaching. He explains that everything Arjuna just heard, well, that was just the introduction, just a handful of examples to get him started. And here it is, the universal principle he was building up to. He's saying, look, don't just get stuck on the things on that list. Instead, recognize that any object, any person, any idea that has exceptional power or glory or beauty, you should know that it's a product of my divine energy. It's a universal formula for perception. But he's still not done. To put all of this into an even grander perspective, he offers one final, staggering revelation that just changes everything. You have to just let this sink in. All the splendor, all the power, all the magnificence of the entire universe, the Himalayas, the sun, the ocean, every hero, every sage, every beautiful thing, all of it is sustained by just a single fraction of this infinite consciousness. The whole cosmos is just a tiny spark from an immeasurable fire. And this leaves us with a final, really provocative thought. This chapter isn't just ancient philosophy, it's a practical invitation. It's a lens for us to look at our own lives. It asks us to start looking for the extraordinary within our ordinary world, in a brilliant idea, in a courageous act, a breathtaking sunset, or maybe even in the best part of ourselves. So the question is, where are you going to look for it? Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into one of the biggest, most mind-bending ideas you can imagine, seeing the entire universe, all at once, in a single, jaw-dropping, and frankly, terrifying moment. I mean, really think about that for a second. What would that even look like? Well, this isn't just some sci-fi concept. It's a question that's been asked for centuries. And we're going to explore the moment it was actually answered, right in chapter 11 of the Bhagavad Gita. This is the part where the warrior Arjuna, he turns to his guide Krishna and asks for exactly that, to see it all. So let's set the stage here. We're in the middle of this epic battlefield, right? And our hero, Arjuna, he's basically frozen, completely paralyzed by doubt. But then, after listening to Krishna's teachings, something just clicks. His whole worldview gets turned upside down. The Gita says his delusion has gone away. And it's in this moment of brand new clarity that he makes a request that is, well, it's incredibly daring. He basically says, "O Supreme Lord, I want to see you. I want to see your real, divine, universal form." But here's what's so important. He doesn't demand it. This isn't some arrogant challenge. It's actually incredibly humble. He adds a condition saying, "Only if you think I can handle it. Only if you think I'm worthy of seeing it." And Krishna's response? No hesitation. Not even for a second. He's like, okay, you want to see? I'll show you. He promises a spectacle that is literally beyond anything a human mind can comprehend. And get this, he's not just going to show Arjuna one divine form. He says, "Behold my hundreds, nay thousands of divine forms. All of them, all at once." Okay, so there's a catch. It's like trying to watch a 4K movie on an old black and white TV. It just won't work. Krishna tells him, look, your regular human eyes, they can't process this. They're just not built for it. So to make it possible, he gives Arjuna a gift, a supernatural upgrade, if you will. Divine eyes, capable of seeing the true cosmic reality. And just like that, the veil is lifted. Reality, as Arjuna knows it, just peels away. What he sees next is impossible to describe. It's a vision that is at once the most beautiful thing imaginable, and at the same time, the most terrifying. A total paradox. So, how in the world do you put something like this into words? I mean, it's literally indescribable. The text has to try, though, and the way it does it is just wow. It says to imagine the light of 1,000 suns. Not just rising, but all exploding at the exact same moment in the sky. Can you even picture that? That's the level of brightness we're talking about. So at first, Arjuna is just stunned, completely awestruck. He's seeing everything, the entire universe, all packed into Krishna's one single form.
You've got all the gods, all the living things. You've even got Lord Brahma sitting on his lotus throne. It's all there. And this form has countless arms, countless mouths, countless eyes, stretching on forever. It's the ultimate vision of creation. Everything connected, everything as one. But then, that sense of wonder, it twists into pure horror. Because the vision shifts. He sees all the warriors from the battlefield, his friends, his teachers, his enemies. All of them are being sucked into these terrifying, fiery mouths. He sees their heads being crushed between these giant teeth. It's like watching moths fly straight into a flame. This isn't just a vision of creation anymore. It's a vision of total cosmic destruction. The whole world is being scorched. And you know what? It's just too much. It's too much for any human mind to handle. Arjuna is completely overwhelmed. That awe he felt, it's gone, replaced by sheer terror. He says it himself. My heart is distressed. I can't find patience or peace. He's completely losing it.
He's shaken right to his very core. And he basically screams out a question he needs to know what he's looking at. Think about it. The kind, gentle friend and guide he was just talking to has transformed into this universe-eating monster. So he begs, "Tell me, who are you, you fierce one?" And the answer he gets? This is the absolute core of the entire chapter, the big reveal. Krishna says, "I am time." Let that sink in. Not a god, not a person, but time itself, the mighty world-destroying force of time, the power that brings everything into existence, and the very same power that, in the end, destroys it all. So Krishna breaks it down for him. He explains that terrifying vision of death. He says, look, all these warriors you're worried about, I have already killed them. From the perspective of time, their fate is already sealed. It's a done deal. So what's Arjuna's role in all this? Krishna tells him, you are just the instrument. He's not the cause, he's the means through which destiny unfolds.
At this point, Arjuna is just done. He's trembling. He's terrified. He's seen way too much. He can't handle the weight of this cosmic truth anymore. And so he begs Krishna, please, go back to the form I know.
And he feels so bad, He's suddenly horrified, realizing he's been treating this infinite cosmic being like just a buddy, his pal. He's completely humbled, and he apologizes for being so casual, not understanding Krishna's true greatness. He pleads, "Show me that form again. My mind is just wrecked with fear." And Krishna does. He shifts back to his gentle, familiar human form, and he immediately comforts Arjuna, who is still just completely freaked out. And then he tells him something incredible. He says, "Hey, what you just saw, that's a really, really big deal. It's so rare that even the gods themselves are constantly hoping for just a glimpse of it." And this is where we get to the real takeaway of the whole experience, the so what of it all. Krishna makes it super clear that the kind of truth Arjuna just saw, well, you can't get there the usual ways. You can't just study it in books or get it through extreme self-discipline or by giving to charity or performing rituals. None of that stuff will get you there. So, if none of that works, what does? What's the secret key? Krishna gives him the answer. It's something called Ananya Bhakti, which basically means exclusive, unwavering, single-minded devotion. It's the only way to really know this reality, to see it, and eventually to become one with it. It's not about what you think, it's about what you feel. It's a path of the heart.
Okay, so what does that kind of devotion actually look like in day-to-day life? Krishna doesn't leave him hanging. He wraps up the chapter with a very clear checklist. He says the person who really gets it, who really reaches him, is the one who dedicates all their actions to him, who sees him as the ultimate goal. They're free from attachments to anything. And maybe most importantly, they have absolutely no hatred or ill will toward anybody or anything.
And that leaves us with this huge, fascinating paradox, doesn't it? On one hand, Krishna's vision shows us a universe where everything is kind of predetermined. Destiny is already set in motion by time. But on the other hand, the whole lesson is about how our actions, our devotion, and our choice to be a good instrument, that's what matters most. So it leaves us chewing on this profound question. If the final chapter is already written, what's the point of the words we write on our page every day? What is the real meaning of our actions?
All right, so today we're diving into one of the most profound conversations ever recorded, and it comes from Chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. It's basically a masterclass in how to handle a crisis, and it all kicks off with this legendary hero who's just completely falling apart.
So picture this. You're on a massive battlefield, but the real war, well, that's happening inside the mind of this incredible warrior, Arjuna. He's having a total moral breakdown. He just completely surrenders to his guide, Krishna, and his plea is so simple, so desperate. He just says, "Tell me what to do. What is the right path?" He's completely lost and just needs a guide.
So, let's talk about this hero's moral crisis. I mean, what could possibly bring a celebrated hero, the best of the best, to this breaking point? Well, the scene is set for this huge civil war, and Arjuna, who's like the greatest archer of his time, is supposed to be fighting for his kingdom. But then he looks across the battlefield, and he doesn't see enemies. He sees his family, his teachers, his cousins, his grandfather, everyone.
And just like that, his resolve completely crumbles. He's just overcome with grief, and he turns to Krishna and asks, "How can I possibly fire arrows at Bhishma and Drona?" I mean, these are the people he loves, the people he respects more than anyone. The very thought of fighting them is just too much to handle.
And his reasoning, it makes sense from his point of view. He's basically saying that any victory would be completely tainted, it would be meaningless. He thinks it's better to live as a beggar than to enjoy any kind of pleasure that's, and I quote, stained with blood. The idea of ruling a kingdom just isn't worth the pain of losing his family.
And that's it. He just gives up, totally overwhelmed, totally confused. He literally puts down his weapons, sinks down in his chariot, and just tells Krishna flat out, "I will not fight." This is his rock bottom. He's no longer a warrior in this moment. He's a student desperately looking for answers from his guide.
Okay, so this brings us to Krishna's teaching on the eternal soul. And you gotta ask, how does Krishna respond to this complete breakdown? Well, it's not with a pep talk. It's not with some clever battle strategy. Nope. He goes way, way deeper. He starts with a lesson on the fundamental nature of reality itself.
Krishna starts with this, gentle but really firm correction. He basically tells Arjuna, you're saying a lot of wise-sounding things, but you're mourning for stuff that the truly wise don't mourn for. It's like he's saying, look, your heart is in the right place, I get it, but your whole perspective is clouded right now. So to cut through all that confusion, Krishna introduces this absolutely central idea, the concept of the Atma, or the soul. And he explains that this is your real self, your true identity, and it is completely, fundamentally different from the physical body that it's living in. And he draws this really sharp line in the sand. Look at the body. It's perishable. It goes through youth, old age, and eventually it's gone. But the soul, the Atma, that's eternal. It doesn't change. It can't be destroyed. And really getting this concept is the first major step out of Arjuna's despair.
And then Krishna uses this brilliant, super simple analogy to make it crystal clear. He says the body is just like a set of clothes. Think about it. When your clothes get old and worn out, you just discard them and put on new ones, right? Well, that's what the soul does. It leaves an old body and simply enters a new one. Suddenly, death isn't this terrifying final end, it's just a change.
So here's the bottom line, the crucial point. The soul is literally invincible. Weapons can't cut it, fire can't burn it, water can't wet it, and the wind can't dry it. No physical harm can ever touch the true self. And that means Arjuna's grief over the idea of killing his relatives, well, it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of who and what they really are.
All right, so now we're moving on to the call to duty. After laying this pretty heavy metaphysical groundwork, Krishna brings the whole conversation right back down to earth. He pivots from the eternal nature of the soul to Arjuna's very practical, very real role in the world right now.
And he does this by reminding Arjuna of his dharma. Now, dharma isn't just your job or your career. It's so much more. It's your sacred purpose, your righteous place in the grand scheme of things. And for Arjuna, who's a Kshatriya, a warrior, his dharma is to fight in a righteous war to protect justice. And Krishna makes it very clear, this is a righteous war.
And the consequences of walking away from that duty? Well, Krishna lays them out, and they are stark. He warns Arjuna that he won't just be sinning, he'll face total dishonor. People will talk about his cowardice forever. And for a legendary, honored warrior like Arjuna, that kind of shame is a fate literally worse than death.
So from this perspective, from the perspective of Dharma, it's actually a win-win situation. Krishna says, look, either you'll die in battle and go to heaven, or you'll win and get to enjoy your kingdom on earth. Pretty straightforward, right? The only real way to lose here is to not fight at all.
And this, right here, brings us to the real philosophical core of the entire chapter, action without attachment. This is a truly revolutionary way to think about action itself. And honestly, this is the part where Krishna gives a tool that isn't just for Arjuna on a battlefield, it's for every single one of us.
This might just be the single most famous verse in the entire Bhagavad Gita. And for good reason. It holds the key to acting with freedom and power. Krishna's instruction is radical. You have a right to your work, to the action itself, but you have no right to the fruits of your work. You have to let go of any attachment to the result. This whole approach has a name, Karma Yoga. You can think of it as the yoga of action. It's this incredible art of doing your duty with 100% dedication and skill, but, and this is the crucial part, without being attached to the outcome. You stay totally balanced, whether you win or you lose.
So you can really break it down into a kind of three-step mental discipline. First, you act with purpose, with resolve. Second, you completely renounce your attachment to a specific result. And third, because of that, you can stay totally even-minded, totally balanced in both success and failure. That, Krishna says, is the real secret to skillful action.
All right, so now we get to the mind of a sage. It's a great question, right? What is a person who has actually mastered this? What do they even look like? How do they act in the real world? And Arjuna, being the practical guy he is, asks that exact question. He basically asks, what are the signs of a person with steady wisdom? How do they talk? How do they sit? How do they move? He wants to know the real, tangible characteristics. You know, how would he recognize this enlightened state in somebody else? Or maybe, just maybe, in himself one day. And Krishna's description is just beautiful. He talks about a person of incredible inner stability, asthita prajna. This is someone who has given up all the selfish desires of the mind. Their satisfaction comes from within themselves, by themselves. It doesn't depend on what's happening outside. So their mind isn't troubled by sorrow, they don't crave pleasure, they're free from fear and anger, they are the masters of their own inner universe.
And then he gives this amazing image to cap it all off. He says this person of steady wisdom can withdraw their senses from sense objects, just like a tortoise pulls its head and limbs into its shell. What a perfect metaphor, right? It's all about having complete control, complete mastery over your mind and your senses. So all of these teachings from Chapter 2 really leave us with a very powerful question to think about for our own lives. In our own moments of crisis, how can we learn to separate our duty, the right thing to do, from our personal desire for a specific outcome? It's amazing how this ancient conversation on a battlefield becomes this incredibly practical tool for navigating our own battles, big and small, today.
All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're tackling one of the Bhagavad Gita's most profound chapters. It asks a really timeless question. What are we, really? And it gives us this incredible framework for the answer. So let's break it all down. So where does this all start? Well, it begins right here, with these questions from Arjuna. And you gotta understand, he's not just looking for a dictionary definition. He's asking for a complete map of reality, from the world around us to the soul within us. His questions literally set the stage for everything we're about to unpack. So here's our game plan. We're just gonna follow Arjuna's lead, step by step. First, we'll figure out what this field and its nowhere actually are. Then we'll get into what true knowledge really means, what its ultimate purpose is, why any of this matters for our day-to-day lives, and finally, how we can actually realize this truth for ourselves. So Krishna's answer is, well, it's brilliant. He uses this incredible metaphor to cut right through all the confusion we have about who we are. He basically says, look, let's simplify things. Everything you experience can be split into just two buckets, the field and the knower of the field. Okay, so first up is the field, or Kshatriya. What is it? Well, simply put, it's you, but it's not the real you. It's the whole setup, your body and your mind. The text says it right there. This body is considered as the field. But trust me, it goes way deeper than just your physical body. And just look at what's included in this field. It's kind of everything. We're not just talking about the physical stuff, it's also our ego, our intellect, our senses, our mind, and even our entire emotional world. Yeah, that's right. Your thoughts, your feelings of joy and pain, your deepest desires. All of it, every single bit, is part of this constantly changing observable field.
Okay, so if all that stuff, your body, thoughts, feelings is the field, then who or what is the one watching it all? Well, that is the Kshatriya, the knower of the field. This is the consciousness that's aware of everything else. It's that quiet part of you that's always there, the silent, steady observer behind it all. It's the soul. And this right here is the absolute key to the whole chapter. Think of the field as a movie. It's full of action, drama, your body ages, your thoughts race, your emotions are all over the place. But the knower is the movie screen. It's totally still, totally unchanged by whatever chaos is happening on it. Getting this difference is the foundation for everything that follows. So, naturally, this leads to the next big question: what exactly is knowledge? And here's the twist. In this philosophy, knowledge isn't about how many books you've read or facts you've memorized. It's not about what you know. It's about how you are. And Krishna doesn't mince words here. He's crystal clear. He says, look, real knowledge is simply knowing the difference between the field and the knower. That's it. Everything else, that's just noise. That's ignorance. All right, so what does it actually look like to have this knowledge? How does a person like that act? Well, on the inside, we're talking about qualities like humility, tolerance, purity, and real self-control. And these aren't just nice moral ideas to aspire to, they're the natural outcome of getting it. When you realize you're not your fluctuating ego, you just naturally become more humble and more stable. And, that internal shift totally changes how you see the outside world. You develop this detachment, but it's not a cold thing. It's not about not loving your family. It's about not letting your entire identity get wrapped up in them, or your job, or your house. You find this inner balance that doesn't get rocked by good times or bad. It's all about shifting your focus from the crazy movie to the calm, steady screen within. Okay, now we're getting into the really mind-bending stuff. Arjuna's next question was basically, what's the ultimate goal of all this knowing? What's the thing we're supposed to know? And the answer is the supreme Brahman. All right, buckle up because our everyday language is going to struggle here. You see, Brahman isn't a thing that exists like a chair or a planet, but you can't say it doesn't exist either. It's just beyond our simple categories of is or isn't. And the paradoxes just keep coming. I mean, how can something be inside you and outside you at the same time, both motionless and in constant motion? But see, it's not supposed to be a logical puzzle. It's trying to describe something that is literally everywhere and in everything all at once. I love this next part. It's so poetic. It's saying the Supreme doesn't have eyes, but it's the very light that allows you to see. It doesn't have ears, but it's the silent space where you hear all sounds. It's the source code for all our senses without being trapped by any of them. So you might be thinking, this is all very deep, but why does it matter to me right now? Well, it matters because getting this wrong, confusing the field with the knower, has a huge, very real consequence. It's the very thing that keeps us stuck in the cycle of rebirth. So let's look at this duality again, but with some different terms. Prakriti, which is matter, and Purusha, the soul. Think of Prakriti as the doer. It's the active, changing world of cause and effect. But Purusha, the soul, is the experiencer. It's the one who feels the joy and the sorrow that comes from all that doing. And here we go. This is the punchline of the whole thing. When the soul, the knower, gets so caught up in the movie that it forgets it's just the screen, when it starts thinking, I am this happiness, or I am this sadness, well, that's attachment. And that attachment is the fuel that keeps the cycle going, propelling the soul into future lives, life after life. So the million-dollar question is, if attachment is the lock, what's the key? How do we break free? Thankfully, Krishna doesn't leave us hanging. He lays out some real, practical paths to actually see the difference for ourselves. And what's so great is that he makes it clear there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Maybe for you, it's meditation, going inward. For someone else, it might be deep study, the path of knowledge. Or maybe it's through selfless action, karma yoga. And for some, it just starts by listening, by having faith in the teachings. The point is, there are many roads up the same mountain. But in the end, it all comes down to this one thing. It doesn't really matter which path you take. What matters is that moment of clarity. The moment you can truly, deeply see the difference between the chaotic field of your body and mind and the calm knower who's watching it. Once you see that, you're on your way. You attain the supreme. So I want to leave you with a question to take with you. The next time you feel a wave of anger or joy or even just a random thought pops into your head, can you try this? Can you just for a second step back and say, that's the fields doing its thing. And in that same moment, can you feel for that other part of you, the quiet, steady, unchanging part that's just watching?
All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to be exploring this really powerful, ancient framework for understanding your own mind. It comes from the Bhagavad Gita, and honestly, it might just change how you see your own emotions.
So, let's kick things off with a question I'm pretty sure you've asked yourself. Ever wonder why your mind is, well, all over the place? You know, one day you're totally on fire, clear, productive, and the next you're just restless, can't sit still. And then there are those days where, let's be real, just getting out of bed feels like a huge win.
Well, according to the Bhagavad Gita, this isn't random. Not at all. It suggests that our whole state of mind is shaped by this constant dance, this interplay of three fundamental forces of nature. And get this, they're always at work inside of us.
These forces have a name. They're called the gunas. The text lays them out as sattva, rajas, and tamas. You can think of them as these three basic attributes that come straight from nature. They're kind of like cosmic threads that influence, well, everything. And they're what bind our soul to our body, through our thoughts, our actions, and yeah, our emotions.
Okay, so what exactly are these three forces? Let's meet them one by one, break them down, and really get a feel for their unique personalities and how they pop up in our day-to-day lives. This chart here does a great job of mapping out the personality of each guna. So, first up, you've got sattva. Think purity, light, health. But, and this is key, it binds you by making you attached to feeling happy and knowledgeable. Then there's rajas. This one is all about passion, motion, that go, go, go energy. It hooks you with an attachment to doing things, and it all comes from craving. And last, we have tamas. This is inertia, darkness. It's what traps you in laziness and sleep, and its root is ignorance. So let's zoom in on sattva for a sec. I mean, you think this is the good one, right? It's clarity, peace, that feeling of well-being. But here's the twist. The text says that even this amazing positive state can be a kind of trap if we get attached to it. You know, if we start needing to feel happy or needing to feel wise all the time. All right, next up is rajas. You can think of this as the engine of ambition. It's that hustle culture energy, right? The passion that makes us chase goals and just constantly do more. The catch? It binds us by getting us hooked on the action itself, locking us into this non-stop cycle of craving and striving. And then there's tamas. This is that feeling of heaviness, of darkness, of inertia. You know when tamas is in charge because you feel that classic brain fog. You're lethargic, confused, totally unmotivated. The Gita says it's born from ignorance, and it traps us in procrastination, carelessness, and just sleep. Okay, let's keep going, because here's where it gets really interesting. These forces, they aren't just sitting still. They're in this constant, dynamic battle for control inside our own minds. The Gita actually describes this as an inner tug-of-war, which is just a perfect metaphor. At any given moment, one guna is winning by overpowering the other two. So when sattva is strong, it quiets down that restlessness and laziness. But when rajas surges, it can totally overwhelm that sense of clarity. This constant shifting, this back and forth, is exactly why our moods and mental states can feel so unstable. So, how can you tell which guna is running the show at any given moment? Well, the signs are actually super clear. When sattva is dominant, you feel that sense of clarity, like a light of knowledge is just shining through everything. When rajas takes the wheel, you feel that restless urge to act, fueled by longing and desire. And when tamas wins the battle? Yep, you're hit with that all-too-familiar feeling of darkness, inaction, and just plain confusion.
Okay, this brings us to the big question, right? Are we just puppets on the strings of these forces? The Gita's answer is a definite no. And what's really fascinating is that the goal isn't just to hang out in that good, sattvic state forever. The real goal is to rise above the pull of all three of them, completely.
And this leads to maybe the most important question in the entire chapter, which is asked by the warrior Arjuna. He's basically asking, okay, so what does it look like when someone transcends these forces? How do you spot them? How do they act? And how do we get there ourselves? The answer paints a picture of someone with this incredible rock-solid inner stability. This is a person who isn't thrown around by happiness or sorrow. To them, praise and criticism, friends and enemies, honor and dishonor, it's all the same. And why? Because they realize it's only the attributes operating. They see it's just the gunas doing their dance, and they know that that's not who they really are. They just remain undisturbed.
So how do you actually get to this state? Well, the Gita points to a specific path, cultivating this unwavering devotion. By dedicating yourself and serving something greater than yourself, whether that's a purpose, a principle, whatever it is for you, and doing it without getting distracted, you can actually transcend these qualities completely, and that's where you find real freedom.
At the end of the day, this ancient framework is so much more than just philosophy. It's a really practical tool for self-awareness. It gives you a lens to look at your inner world without judging it, and to start understanding the forces that are shaping your experience, literally moment to moment. So that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Take a look at your own mind. Right now, which of these three forces is guiding you today?
Today, we're diving into one of the most powerful metaphors in all of spiritual philosophy, straight from chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita. It's this incredible vision of our reality as a giant, cosmic tree that grows completely upside down.
Okay, just think about that for a second. What if everything you see, feel, and experience is part of this massive, inverted tree? This isn't just some quirky image. It's actually a profound map of existence, one that's designed to make us question, well, everything. So the teaching kicks off with this really striking image of the Ashvatha tree. It's described as eternal, unexpendable, with its roots reaching up into the heavens and its branches cascading down into our world. And right away, the text tells us this is a big deal. To understand this tree is to get at the heart of the deepest spiritual truths.
All right, so how do we even begin to unpack this? Let's break down this upside-down tree piece by piece and see how this ancient symbol maps right onto our lives today. First thing to know, the Ashwatha isn't a literal tree you'd find in a forest. It's a symbol for samsara, the material world we live in. It represents this complex, tangled web of life, desire, action, and consequence that we're all caught up in. So check this out. Every part of the tree means something. The roots aren't in the dirt, they're in the divine, the ultimate source of everything. The branches, they spread out and become all the different worlds and realities, including ours. And the buds, well, those are all the things we chase after. Pleasure, success, security, you name it. The objects of our senses. Now, the Gita doesn't just describe this amazing tree. It also explains how we get totally and completely trapped in its branches, a lot of the time without even knowing it. And here's where we get ourselves into trouble. While the main roots are up in the divine, our own actions, our karma, start to sprout new secondary roots. And these are the ones that grow downwards, anchoring us deeper and deeper into this material world, creating attachments with every single choice we make. And this, right here, is the central dilemma. We are living inside this immense, eternal system, but from our limited perspective, we can't see it. We can't see where it starts, where it ends, or even what its true shape is. It's like we're lost in a forest that's so massive we can't even comprehend its scale. So if we're all stuck in this giant, invisible tree, what do we do? How do we get out? This is where the philosophy stops being abstract and gets really, really practical. The Gita doesn't leave us hanging. It offers a clear, actionable solution. The path to freedom, it turns out, isn't about physically escaping the world. It's about fundamentally changing our relationship to it. And to do that, you're going to need a very special kind of tool. The answer isn't a physical axe. It's a psychological one, a sangha, or non-attachment. It's this ability to live, to act, to experience the world without being completely tied to the results of what we do, or a desperate craving for the buds on the tree. It's all about cutting those secondary roots that we ourselves create. The Gita basically lays out this 4-step game plan. First, you have to see the tree for what it is. Then, you wield that weapon of non-attachment to sever the roots of your own entanglement. And the final step? You start to seek the ultimate source, that main root where the whole tree began. The whole goal isn't just to get free from the tree, but to get free to reach its source. And this destination is described as a state of pure consciousness. It's a reality so far beyond our physical universe that it doesn't need the sun or the moon for light,
because it is light itself. It's the place you go where you never have to come back to the cycle. Okay, so we've talked about the map, the tree, but who's the traveler on this journey? The focus now shifts from this huge cosmic tree to the individual soul that's making its way through it. Well, according to the Gita, your true self, the jiva, the soul, is an eternal, indestructible spark of that very same divine source at the tree's main root. And as it journeys through the material world, it picks up a toolkit, the five senses and the mind, which let it interact with all the branches of the tree. I mean, what a beautiful analogy, right? Just like the wind blows through a garden and carries the fragrance with it, the soul, when it moves from one life to the next, carries the essence of its experiences, its consciousness shaped by the mind and senses along with it. But here's the catch. You can't see this true eternal self with your physical eyes. It requires a whole different kind of vision, an inner vision, the eyes of knowledge. And those only open up through things like self-discipline, spiritual practice, and a real search for wisdom. And this brings us to the grand finale. The chapter zooms out one last time to give us the ultimate framework, putting the tree, the soul, and that divine source into their final cosmic context. So it all boils down to this three-part structure of reality. You've got the perishable, Akshar, that's the tree itself, the material world. Then you've got the imperishable, Akshar, that's the individual soul traveling through it. But then there's a third, supreme reality that is beyond both of them. And that ultimate reality, the Purushottama, is the supreme being. It isn't just separate from the tree, it is the source that powers and sustains the entire system. It is the ultimate root of the upside-down tree, and the final destination we're all meant to seek. And the chapter wraps up with this powerful claim. This whole framework isn't just some interesting philosophy, it's called the most secret teaching. The idea is that truly understanding it, seeing the tree, knowing yourself as the soul, and seeking that supreme source is what leads to a real wisdom and a fulfilled life. So it kind of leaves us with one last question. Are you content just living among the branches, or are you ready to seek the root?
All right, today we're diving into something pretty profound. It's an ancient text, the Bhagavad Gita, specifically chapter 16, but you'll be surprised how relevant it feels right now. It gives us this incredible blueprint for understanding human nature, and it all kicks off with one big question.
So let's start there. The text asks us to think about something we've all wondered about. What is it that really defines who we are? Our character. And ultimately, where we're all headed in life. Is it just random luck? Is everything already written in stone? Or is it something that's actually within our control?
Well, according to this chapter, the answer is all about understanding that there are basically two fundamental ways of being in the world. Two types of life creations, as the text calls them. And these aren't just simple personality types, like being an introvert or an extrovert. No, these are described as two completely distinct paths that lead to very, very different places.
And the Gita is incredibly direct about this. It names two natures, the divine, or Daivi, and the demonic, or Asuri. Think of it like this. One path is all about qualities that build things up, that create, that set you free. The other one? Well, it's all about qualities that tear things down, that destroy, and that keep you trapped. And here's the kicker. The text says these inherent natures literally shape how we see the world, what we do, and yeah, even our final destiny.
So what does it actually look like to be on that divine path? The Gita doesn't leave us guessing. It paints this really detailed picture, a kind of portrait of all the qualities that make up this nature. Let's break it down.
So the divine path, it starts on the inside. It's built on a foundation of things like fearlessness, a totally pure conscience, and just good old-fashioned perseverance. And notice how many of these qualities, like self-control and modesty, are about a quiet, internal strength. It's not about putting on a big show. This inner stability is the source code for everything else.
And then, that inner state naturally flows outward into how you act. We're talking about things like nonviolence, being truthful, and having real compassion for all living things. And these aren't just, nice ideas. They're about what you do, what you give, like charity and renunciation, and just as importantly, what you don't do, like being greedy.
Finally, all of that comes together to form your core character. This includes having this positive, fiery energy, but also having the strength to forgive and to be at peace. And what's really fascinating here is this theme of absence,
the absence of anger, the absence of holding grudges, the absence of too much pride. So the divine nature is defined just as much by what isn't there as by what is.
Now, to really understand the light, the Gita flips on a huge spotlight to show us the dark. It helps us understand the divine path by showing us its total opposite, the mindset and the worldview of the Asuri or demonic nature.
And the contrast is, wow, it couldn't be more stark. Where the divine path is about truth, the demonic is defined by hypocrisy. Where one path leads to peace, the other is just fueled by anger. Gentleness gets replaced by harshness, and knowledge gets totally buried by ignorance. It's a complete flip of all the values we just talked about.
And if we dig a little deeper, we find the philosophy that drives all this. The text says that people with this nature see the world as basically a chaotic accident. No moral foundation, no God, no higher power. They believe life is just a product of lust with no real purpose. And this way of thinking, it leads to a destructive mindset, one that's just filled with endless desire, pride, and delusion.
And here, the text lets this mindset speak for itself. This internal monologue is all about ego, right? I got this today. I killed that enemy, and I'll kill more. I am God. I am the one who enjoys everything. Look how rich I am. Who could possibly be like me? It's a worldview that is 100% centered on the self, on power, and on getting more stuff.
Okay, so we've got two completely different ways of being. But so what? What are the actual stakes here? Well, the Gita is crystal clear. These aren't just different lifestyles. They are two paths that lead to two completely different destinations.
So here's the bottom line. The divine path, the one with all those constructive qualities, is said to lead to salvation, to liberation or moksha. But the demonic path, with its destructive egomaniacal nature, that one leads to bondage and what the text bluntly calls a foul hell.
And the consequence isn't just a one-and-done thing. The text describes a cycle, a loop, where those on the demonic path are thrown back into these inauspicious circumstances, birth after birth. They never reach that higher state, and instead, they just keep sinking lower and lower.
So if that demonic path leads to such a terrible outcome, how does anybody end up on it in the first place? This is where the Gita gets super practical. It boils the whole thing down to three specific root causes, three gates that lead to self-destruction. And honestly, this might be the biggest takeaway of the whole chapter.
Yeah, there's no sugarcoating it. They're literally called the gates of hell and are identified as the things that destroy the self. It's a pretty serious warning about the forces that can really pull us off track.
Just three specific things we need to be aware of. Three tendencies that form the entire foundation of that destructive path.
And here they are, plain and simple. First, lust, and that means any kind of insatiable desire. Second, anger. And third, greed. That's it. According to the Gita, these three right here, these are the big ones. They're the main engines that pull a person down that demonic path and straight into ruin.
And the advice that follows is just as simple and direct as the warning. If you want to avoid that destructive fate, the key is to abandon these three things. You have to give them up.
And the upside is just as clear. By consciously choosing to reject lust, anger, and greed, you free yourself from these gates of darkness. And only then, the text argues, can you actually practice what's truly good for you and start making real progress toward that supreme goal of salvation.
So, how do you make these choices every day? They can get complicated, right? Well, the chapter wraps up with this one final piece of advice. It suggests using the wisdom found in scriptures as your standard, as a kind of compass, to help you figure out the right thing to do, what you should do, and maybe more importantly, what you should avoid.
And that really brings the whole thing right back to us, doesn't it? The Gita proposes scripture as a guide, but its core challenge is something that hits home thousands of years later. When you're standing at that fork in the road, the one between a constructive choice and a destructive one, between a selfless act and a selfish one, what's your compass? What do you use to find your way?
All right, let's dive right in. We're exploring a really profound chapter from the Bhagavad Gita today. And it starts with a simple but powerful idea. What if your faith, your beliefs, even the food you crave, what if all of that is a direct reflection of your innermost nature? We're going to break down this incredible framework that acts as a mirror for our deepest motivations.
So, this whole discussion kicks off with a fascinating question. Imagine someone who is deeply faithful, They truly believe, but they don't really follow the traditional scriptures or the old rules. Is their faith still valid? And more importantly, what kind of quality does it have? It's a question I think a lot of us can probably relate to in our own lives.
And this is exactly the dilemma that the great warrior Arjuna is facing. He turns to his guide, Krishna, because he needs some clarity. He's trying to understand the inner state of people who act from this place of really strong belief, even if they're kind of setting aside the ancient rule books to do it.
Now, what's so interesting here is that the question isn't just, is this right or wrong? Arjuna is asking something way deeper. He wants to know the quality of that faith. Is it born of purity and goodness, what's called sattva? Is it driven by passion and ambition, that fiery rajas energy? Or does it come from a place of ignorance and darkness, which is tamas? And Krishna's answer is, well, it's foundational. He explains that our faith isn't something we just choose out of thin air. Nope. It actually stems from our inherent nature, which is this blend of three fundamental qualities, or gunas, that exist in pretty much all of creation.
So here's the core idea. We are not blank slates. The text tells us that we're each born with a certain disposition, a certain wiring. And our faith naturally lines up with this inner nature. So how does this actually play out in the real world?
Well, we can see exactly how our dominant quality, our guna, shapes what we focus on. A sattvic person, who's driven by purity and goodness, naturally worships the divine. A rajasic person, who's full of passion and ambition, is drawn to powerful beings, like demigods or even demons. And then you have a tamasic person, who's influenced by ignorance and inertia. They tend to gravitate towards ghosts and spirits.
And the text makes this incredibly powerful claim right here. Essentially, you are your faith. Your core beliefs, where you place your devotion, those aren't just accessories you pick up. They're a direct, unfiltered reflection of your fundamental self.
But okay, these qualities aren't just some high-level abstract theory. Krishna brings it right down to earth. He shows how they pop up in our most basic, everyday choices, and he starts with the very food we put in our mouths.
Yeah, the breakdown of food is incredibly practical. Sattvic foods are the ones that promote life and health. They're nourishing, they're juicy, they're agreeable. But on the other end of the spectrum, you've got rajasic and tamasic foods. These are either excessively flavored, super bitter, sour, or hot, causing pain and disease, or they're just plain bad, stale, tasteless, maybe even rotten. The text suggests our food cravings are a direct mirror of what's going on inside. And this same idea applies to our actions, or sacrifices. A sattvic action. That's something you do simply because it's the right thing to do. It's a duty, and there are no strings attached. But a rajasic action, that's all about getting something in return, right? It's about showing off. And a tamasic action is one that's just done carelessly, with no devotion, no proper procedure, and definitely no generosity. Even our self-discipline, or what the text calls austerity, falls into these categories. Is it sattvic, done with pure devotion, just for self-improvement? Or is it rajasic, done for public praise and honor, maybe with a little bit of hypocrisy thrown in? Or, in its darkest form, is it tamasic, based on some foolish idea, causing harm to yourself or maybe even to others? The motivation, you see, is absolutely everything.
And finally, let's look at charity. A sattvic gift is totally selfless. It's given to the right person at the right time with zero thought of getting something back. A rajasic gift, on the other hand, is transactional. It's given grudgingly or because you're expecting a favor in return. And a tamasic gift? Well, that's just thoughtless and disrespectful, given at the wrong time, to the wrong person, maybe even with contempt.
So after laying out this entire system of human nature, Krishna offers this profound tool. It's a way to purify and elevate any action, no matter what it is, and connect it to the ultimate reality. This is the principle of Om Tat Sat.
Now, this isn't just some random chant. The text explains that Om Tat Sat is actually a three-part name for the absolute truth, for the ultimate reality, Brahman. And by using it, we can reframe the intention behind literally anything we do and turn it into a kind of spiritual offering.
So how does it actually work in practice? Well, first, you begin any significant act by uttering Om to invoke the divine. Then you perform the act with the spirit of Tat, which means that, to signify that this isn't for your personal gain, but for that ultimate reality. And finally, the action is grounded in Sat, which stands for goodness and reality, making the whole deed steadfast and true.
And all of this brings us to the final, powerful conclusion of the chapter. After explaining all of these categories and all these tools, Krishna circles right back to the most fundamental element of all, faith.
And this right here, this is the mic drop. This is the final verdict. You can perform all the rituals, give all the charity, and practice all the austerities you want. But if it's done without genuine faith, the Gita calls it asat, which literally means non-existent. It has no value, not in this life and not in the next. The belief and the intention behind the action are what give it life.
And so that leaves us with a question to really reflect on. When you look at your own daily life, the food you eat, the work you do, the way you give back, what's the dominant quality you see? Is it rooted in goodness, in passion, or maybe in ignorance? This ancient framework isn't just philosophy, it's a mirror for some serious self-understanding.
All right, here we are. After journeying through 17 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, we've finally made it to the grand finale, Chapter 18. This is it. This is where all the threads, all the concepts we've talked about really come together. Krishna is about to give his final, most complete teaching on what is, let's be honest, the biggest question of all. How in the world do we live and act without getting completely tangled up by it all? So let's dive into Krishna's ultimate masterclass on the art of action.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're right back on the battlefield, and Arjuna, this incredible warrior, is, well, he's still confused. Can you blame him? After everything he's heard, he boils it all down to two key ideas that, at first glance, seem pretty similar. Renunciation, which is sannyasa, and abandonment, or tyaga. He's like, Krishna, I need to know the real difference between these two. And believe it or not, this one question is what kicks off the entire final chapter. It's the launch pad for everything that follows.
So Krishna's like, okay, let's break this down. He starts with the first one, sannyasa. He explains that the wise see sannyasa as basically resigning from any action that's purely driven by your own selfish desires. You know what I mean? Like, think about working late only because you want that bonus. Or, being super nice to someone just because you're hoping they'll do you a favor. That's the kind of action sannyasa is about letting go of. It's about dropping the what's in it for me motivation.
Okay, now for the second term, tyaga. And this one is a little trickier, a lot more subtle, and honestly, it's really at the heart of the Gita's whole message. Krishna says tyaga is about giving up the fruits, the results, the outcomes of all your actions. Now, this is super important. This does not mean you just stop doing things and sit on the couch. Not at all. It means you do what you have to do, you perform your duties with your whole heart, but you completely release your grip on the outcome. The results, whether they're good or bad, you just offer them up.
So here's the bottom line, the big difference. Sannyasa is about not doing certain actions, the selfishly motivated ones. Tyaga, though, is an attitude. It's a mindset you bring to literally every action. It's that inner shift where you let go of the need for a specific result. You detach from the praise, the blame, the success, the failure. You can probably see where this is going, right? Krishna is basically pointing Arjuna, and all of us, towards tyaga. He's saying this is the more powerful, more practical way to navigate life.
But wait, it gets even deeper. Krishna's like, hold on, even the way you give something up matters. He introduces this amazing framework of 3 qualities. So check this out. If you give up your duties just because you're confused or deluded, that's called tamasik. Or if you quit because you're afraid of the hard work or the potential pain, that's rajasik. And in both of those cases, you don't really get any spiritual benefit. The only true abandonment, the one he calls sattvic, is when you do your duty with everything you've got, but you are truly, genuinely unattached to the result. That's the sweet spot. And this whole framework, these 3 qualities, sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic, it turns out it's not just about how you abandon things. Krishna basically reveals that this is a universal lens you can use to look at, well, everything. It applies to the kind of knowledge you have, the actions you take, and maybe most importantly, it applies to you, the actor, the doer. So you see, it's not just about what you do, it's about the whole inner vibe, the state of being you're doing it from. So let's see what that actually looks like.
First up, we've got the ideal, right? This is the sattvic doer, the balanced actor. Picture this, someone who is completely engaged, they're enthusiastic, they're committed to what they're doing. But, and this is the absolute key, they are totally free from attachment and ego. They do amazing work just for the sake of doing it well, but their inner calm doesn't get rattled whether they succeed or fail. Their joy comes from the act itself, not from winning the prize at the end.
Next, we have the rajasic doer. And let's be real, this is probably where a lot of us find ourselves a lot of the time. This is the passionate, super results-driven person.
Their whole motivation is the fruit of the action, getting the promotion, the praise, the win. And because of that, their emotional life is just a total roller coaster, right? They're ecstatic when things go well, and they're crushed when they don't. Their happiness is completely chained to the outcome. Sound familiar?
And finally, we have the tamasic doer, the deluded actor. This state is really defined by inaction, by confusion, by negativity. Think of someone who's just stuck. They're lazy, they're stubborn, they put everything off. And when they finally do act, it's often without any real thought or planning, and it kind of just makes things worse. It's that feeling of being in a fog, just completely unable to act with any real purpose.
So this brings up a huge question, right? If we're supposed to act, but without being attached to the results, then what the heck are we supposed to do? Krishna's answer is this absolutely beautiful concept called swadharma. Swa means own, and dharma means duty or path. So it's your own path. It's the set of duties that springs from your own unique nature, your own talents, your own disposition. It's all about finding the work and the role in this life that is authentically 100% yours.
And this idea of swadharma leads to what might be some of Krishna's most radical advice in the entire Gita. He says, get this, it is better to do your own duty, even imperfectly, than to do someone else's duty perfectly. Just let that sink in for a second. This is an all-out assault on the whole game of comparison and trying to be like someone else. The message is crystal clear. The world doesn't need another perfect imitation of somebody else. It needs the real, authentic, even imperfect version of you.
I mean, the takeaway for us today is just massive, isn't it? We live in this world of social media where it looks like everyone else has it all figured out. Their lives look perfect. And this ancient wisdom is shouting at us to stop looking out there and to turn our attention inward. Find your path, your swadharma, your unique thing to contribute, and then just commit to it. So what if it's messy? So what if it's not perfect? It's your path, and that's where the real joy, the real fulfillment is actually found.
So Krishna doesn't just leave us with the theory. He gives us the practical steps, the how-to for getting to the state of real freedom. It's all about inner work, a kind of spiritual housekeeping. First, you've got to purify your intellect. Really get clear on what's what. Then, you learn to control your mind with some firmness, not let it run all over the place. Next, you work on abandoning those powerful pulls of I love this and I hate that. And finally, you release that iron grip of ego, of pride, of thinking this is mine. This is the internal work you gotta do for true tyaga.
And then, it all comes to a head. It builds to this one verse, maybe one of the most famous and powerful in the entire Gita. After explaining everything, all the details about action, duty, letting go, Krishna gives the final, ultimate key. He basically says, look, after all this said and done, abandon all these other paths and just take refuge in me, surrender completely. He promises that this single act of ultimate trust, of just letting go, is what will finally liberate you from every sin, every struggle. Do not grieve, he says. It's an incredible promise.
So, as we wrap up this journey through the Gita's final chapter, we're left with a really practical challenge. Because, as we've seen, this isn't about running away from the world. It's about changing how we relate to our actions in the world. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. What is just one fruit of your action, just one outcome that you're clinging to, that you could practice letting go of just for today? Maybe it's the need for praise, or a very specific result on a project at work, or just getting recognized by someone. What's one thing you could do with all your heart and then just let the result be what it will be?